Hey everybody, welcome back to the program. Today I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on the new stereo mix of Revolver done by Giles Martin and Sam O'Kell, and I'm going to be talking about it strictly on vinyl. So I'm not going to be going into the digital versions or the Dolby Atmos mixes. This is purely vinyl based, and I'll be comparing it to two other pressings that I have. The original stereo mix pressed to vinyl in the UK around the early 80s, as well as the 2009 digital remaster pressed to vinyl starting around 2012. I'm not sure when my copy was pressed, but that was the version that you would most likely find in record stores new over the last couple of years. So that all being said, overall, I really enjoyed this new mix. I think what it does best is that it brings the stereo separation, the overall sound stage into the modern era, especially when you're listening to it on headphones or earbuds. The old mix felt really uneven. Part of that was just because stereo was new and there really wasn't necessary. It was almost like they were trying to make it overly separated so that you could really hear the stereo, because it was much more of a niche thing, almost like a novelty in a way. So yeah, in terms of the stereo, much better. And also there are moments, I think, overall where the bass is brought up. Things are less, what's the term? I feel like things have a little bit more room to breathe. Especially when it comes to the treble instruments, sort of the cymbal crashes, that sort of a thing. I think there's a better balance between the vocals and the other instruments. And generally speaking, I would say that it does adhere to the original recording. I don't think it's possible, but for some reason in my head, I think it's because I was partially influenced by the new remix of Animals. Going into this mix, I think I was expecting a little bit more fidelity in terms of the recording, but I don't think you can polish it that much because it's not there. You know what I mean? Like, especially for this, I hesitate to call it an early Beatles recording, but this was limited technology. It was the best at that time, but the nature of it meant that a lot of these songs were recorded live, and a lot of the instruments are all on one track because they only use a 4-track recorder. So that's why this mix is only coming out now, because they didn't have the technology to do that. It's only been in the last couple of years, thanks to Peter Jackson and his team, coming up with this AI technology to demix tracks, that this is even possible. So that's really cool. But I think, at the end of the day, the quality of the recording is the quality of the recording. Like, sometimes the drums, to me, don't sound as full and rich as they should sound, but I think that's just how they were recorded, and you can't necessarily change that, you know what I mean? So I think I was a little I wasn't off-put, but I guess I was a little disappointed that we couldn't get more fidelity out of these recordings, but I think we should just be thankful that we were even able to get this new stereo mix. I mean, it really does sound good. That being said, though, there are moments, granted not a lot, but there are moments where I actually prefer the original stereo mix, which was surprising. And I think that just gets back to an overall re-evaluation that I've done with this stereo mix. I think what happened was, especially when you listen to Side 1, Track 1, Taxman, that stereo mix is pretty egregious. It feels very unbalanced, especially on headphones. And so I think I just sort of listened to that and assumed the whole record's that way. Whereas, now sitting down and comparing this mix to the old mix, going track by track, really, going through it with a fine-tooth comb, I started to realize, it's not as bad as I thought it was. Like, it's not egregious in the way that I assumed it was. And so, again, it's not my preferred way to listen to Revolver, but there are choices that are present, and I'll get into these, of the original mix that I like more. But anyway, that being said, let's get into the details. Let's get into the nitty gritty. Just like I did for the Animals remix video, I will be playing samples and I will not be masking these. I'll just label the tracks, where they come from. And yeah, so let's get into this. We're gonna start with Taxman, and we're gonna start with the very beginning where it does that countdown and there's that little bit of studio chatter. I noticed right off the bat, there is like a tape hum or an amp hum that is not present in the new mix. And I don't know how I feel about it. It does sound better sonically, but does it really sound better? I almost like that amp hum because it reminds me of being in a band and hearing the tube amp going, and it's like something's gonna start, something exciting is about to happen. So yeah, let me know what you think.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2.
Overall, I would say on this song especially, the stereo separation and the overall placement of the instruments feels like a big improvement. But I especially love the treatment of the cowbell in the new mix. And the bass sounds way better throughout this song, and I love the fact that they moved the guitar solo to the center channel. I just think it sounds so much better. Moving on to Eleanor Rigby, I feel like the strings are a tad more open, a little bit more full. It's a subtle change, but I think it's really for the best. Okay, so right around the 15-second mark, I heard this, what I call a mixing mistake. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but it's interesting because I've never heard this before, or never noticed it before. And it's right when Paul's singing Eleanor, for like a split second, you can hear him sing out of both the right and the left, but then you can audibly hear the left side, almost like someone's like turning a knob down, where it just eliminates his voice from the left side, and then it's the rest of the time it's only on the right side. And and this is both in the original mix and the remaster of the original mix, but in the new mix that is fixed and his vocals are brought to the center, which I think is a big improvement.
Eleanor Rigby, Eleanor Rigby, Eleanor Rigby.
Overall, this is my favorite of the whole remix. I just love the way this song sounds. It's also one of my favorite Beatles songs, so that might have something to do with it. But I think what makes this work so well is the treatment of Paul's vocals. It just sounds so much better. It's a big improvement in my book. Moving on to I'm Only Sleeping. Right off the bat, I gotta say, the original mix wasn't bad, but this new mix brings up the bass, and that's what sells me on it. Moving on to Love You Too, the original mix to me sounds a little shrill, a little scratchy, and this new mix helps to like round out the sharpness. It feels a bit warmer to me now. And again, the original stereo mix for this song wasn't bad upon my real evaluation of it, but I gotta say that this new mix really helps clean it up. I feel the individual instruments really stand out more. It just sounds overall cleaner to me, less messy. All right, now we have Here, There, and Everywhere, and I have to admit that I thought the original mix sounded just fine, but now hearing this new mix, oh my gosh, they really brought up the bass and drums, and it sounds so much more full. The original mix, the bass and drums are there, but you can barely hear them, and this is just, sounds so much better to me.
Making each day of the year, making
Moving on to Yellow Submarine, and right away I noticed that Ringo's vocals are brought more towards the center. The volume is also raised a bit, and the reverb or echo effect placed on his vocals is brought down just a tad. It's not as noticeable, and I think that's for the best. Also, I feel like the guitars are moved more to the center as well.
In the town where I was born, in the town where I was born, in the town where I was born.
One thing I noticed too is that the waves sound effect feels better, or at least it surrounds me more. It's not as loud as it is on the original mix, which I thought was a little overpowering, especially compared to the way it sounds on this new mix. So I really like that change.
Beneath the waves, beneath the waves, beneath the waves.
But the one thing I'm kind of questioning is the call and response vocals. They left them on the right side, and I kind of would have liked to have heard them more in the center channel.
That's all we need, that's all we need, that's all we need.
All right, moving on to She Said, and I think this is the rare misstep with this new stereo mix. There's a level of cacophony that is lost in this new mix, and I think that really worked in the original mix. It sort of hid some of these flaws in terms of, like, now you can really hear the guitar just sort of dropping out. It's really weird. Like, it's present in the original mix if you really listen for it, but you just don't hear it. Versus this new mix, like, you can audibly hear the guitar just go away and then come back. Like, it sort of dips. It doesn't sound right to me. Some folks on Reddit have said that this particular song sounds a lot better in the Dolby Atmos mix. Like, it sort of swirls around you. So that could be part of it. But yeah, as it is, it just doesn't sound that great. However, I will say that moving the drums towards the center was the right move.
I know what it's like to be dead. I know what it's like to be dead. I know what it's like to be dead.
All right, up next we have Good Day Sunshine, and right away I noticed that the drums are moved towards the center, which was definitely the right move. Also, the piano or pianos, I can't tell if it's one or two pianos here, but regardless, in the original mix, it definitely sounded at odds with itself. It was like fighting a little bit in the mix, whereas this new mix, it definitely feels more balanced on the left and right side. But other than that, though, I would say that this new mix really isn't that different from the original.
Good day, sunshine. Good day, sunshine. Good day, sunshine.
Next we come to And Your Bird Can Sing. And this is another case where I prefer the stereo treatment of John's double-tracked vocals on the original mix. On the new mix, they're moved towards the center, and it sounds like he's kind of singing up here, like right above my head. But the double-tracked vocals themselves feel like they're a bit out of phase, like they're kind of fighting each other. I don't know how to explain it really. Whereas on the original mix, again, it sounds like he's on either side of me, and it sounds like two halves of a whole. Like they're slightly different, and it just sounds really, really cool.
And your bird can sing. And your bird can sing. And your bird can sing.
And I also love how his vocals really come together on the word me in the original mix. It just sounds so powerful compared to the new mix, which is rather subdued. And it's odd, but I feel like they also brought down the volume on the guitar solo almost to the same level as the drums. Like now they're kind of fighting on this new mix. All right, so now we have For No One, and right off the bat, I think the overall balance of the levels is much better in this new mix. In the old mix, his vocals were almost too loud. It almost overpowered the other instruments.
Your day breaks, your mind aches. Your day breaks, your mind aches. Your day breaks, your mind aches.
But what's interesting though is that I think we lose the bass in this new mix. It's brought down a bit, but I think overall this creates a better bed for McCartney's vocals to play against.
No sign of love behind the tears. No sign of love behind the tears. No sign of love behind the tears.
So now we've come to Dr. Robert, and I am torn on this new mix because I think overall it's better in terms of, it just sounds like a fuller, more high fidelity version of that song. I think the stereo placement of all the instruments sounds better, but the treatment of John's vocals I liked more on the original mix. Again, it's that whole John singing on either side of me. I really enjoyed just the treatment of that, and it's lost on this new mix.
My friend, I said you called Dr. Roberts. My friend, I said you called Dr. Roberts. My friend, I said you called Dr. Roberts.
That being said, I think the well, well, well section sounds a lot better on this new mix. Up next, we have Harrison's I Want to Tell You, and this new mix definitely sounds better. It sounds more full with a wider spectrum of sound.
I want to tell you, I want to tell you, I want to tell you.
In this section, I'm going to play you here. I think the bass sounds much better in the new mix. It feels like it sits better with the other instruments. In the old mix, it kind of stuck up a little too loud.
It's only me, it's not, it's only me, it's not, it's only me, it's not.
All right, up next, we have Got to Get You Into My Life, and right away, the horn sounds so much better to me in this new mix. And overall, I think McCartney's vocals sound a lot better in this new mix. It feels better balanced with the other instruments.
Ooh, and I suddenly see you. Ooh, and I suddenly see you. Ooh, and I suddenly see you.
All right, lastly, we have Tomorrow Never Knows, and this is kind of a toss-up for me. The bass definitely sounds better in the new mix, but the bird sound, I don't know what it is, that sort of caw, 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 caw sound. I feel like that's one of my favorite parts of this song, and it on this new mix, it's brought down a bit or something, or at least that's how it sounds to me. It just doesn't stand out as well as it does on the original mix. And so, yeah, it's kind of a toss-up. Overall, I would say that the vocals, they really sound similar. I can't really hear a difference between the old and new mix.
That you may see the meaning of within. That you may see the meaning of within. That you may see the meaning of within.
So yeah, those are just my initial thoughts on the new stereo mix. Overall, I am happy with it, and I think over time I will appreciate the stereo mix now, this new stereo mix now. I think, my initial first impressions, I guess I was just expecting a little bit more to sound it, to have it sound a little more different, more, bigger, better, whatever. But, I think it really honors the album, and it really gives me more appreciation. 1966, this album coming out. I mean, it sounds so incredible, and I really fell in love with the album as a whole all over again. I mean, this is probably my second favorite Beatles album now. I don't know where it was before, but oh my gosh, it was just like every song on here, I just was like, ooh, I love that one. Ooh, I love that part. Ooh, I love that. I kept getting distracted. I was trying to listen to the differences. I was just like falling in love with the music. But before I let you guys go, I do want to touch on the Revolver sessions. I was pleasantly surprised with those. Here I was expecting to hear like the same song over and over again, but no, oh my goodness. The selections they chose were all very different, So it really felt less like the same song over and over again, but just like an evolution of these songs. So I really appreciate what they gave us. I love hearing bits of the studio banter, hearing George Martin talk in the studio, that sort of a thing. And it was just beautiful to hear these songs in early development. I also really loved how they included some retracted versions of like Tomorrow Never Knows, and they're not that different if you're not super familiar with the song, but they are coveted. Those pressings go for a lot more money. And then I finally got to start reading the book as I was listening to the sessions, and the book is so very cool. So despite sort of the downfalls of this being kind of a rushed product in my opinion, in terms of especially the pressing of the vinyl. I did have one case of a slightly warped record. Didn't affect playback, but I've never had that issue with any of the other Beatles releases, so it was disappointing to get that. But otherwise, yeah, I really enjoy the new stereo mix, but yeah, I mean, it will definitely be my go-to, I think. And I'm also really enjoying revisiting it in mono. That's been fun, but that's going to be a separate video as well. So yeah, that's the long and short of it. I want to know what you have to say. What do you think of this new stereo mix? What did you love about it? What did you hate about it? Leave me a comment down below. Until then, thank you all so very much for watching, but I especially want to thank my members over on Patreon. I'm your Vinyl Geek, and I'll catch you on the flip side.